Superman, on the other hand, which came out in 1978, was expected for a long time. It had been in production forever. People knew about it, and it had a huge popular cast, and so much money went into it, and it turned out pretty great considering all the hype around it could have set it up to fail. And it came out in late '78, so it barely made it in December. The budget for it was $55 million, which was a really high, maybe the highest to date for like budgeting for the movie too. But it was billed as "You Will Believe a Man Can Fly."
And you did. I mean, it's kind of, the flying effects look kind of hokey by today's standards, but as a little kid watching it, it transported you to it. There were actually a bunch of different films in one. You got the sort of sci-fi opening,
Yep.
This very austere, cerebral.
It looks like Tron. They're all wearing these reflective suits. You have Marlon Brando is actually like standing up and walking around doing his character, which he didn't want to do.
And this is they got him, after The Godfather and his Oscar win, and sort of at the height of him being kind of the esteemed elder statesman of American actors at that point, even though he wasn't elderly, he was only in his 50s, But
really?
If that, I think, he was. And he, and then they had, Gene Hackman coming off of his Oscar win for French Connection, and so it did start this sort of thing of getting quality big name actors for key roles in a comic book movie.
It wasn't camp.
Yeah. Although certainly they had, the comic relief with Otis and Luther and Mr.
And there's some goofiness in the end with the Earth being rewound, of course.
But for the most part, there was a lot of, it was played straight, and you have this whole sort of
straight in a comic book sense.
But think about the death of Pa Kent in the middle movie, which is this kind of rustic coming of age story. Glenn Ford's only in the movie a few scenes, but his death scene, people still remember that, and it had such impact, so you believed a man could fly, but you also just believed in that man, and that's what they had to get done. They had to get Clark Kent right in order for Superman to work.
Yeah, Zack Snyder really loved this year.
Think about it. He basically ended up redoing both of those things. But also, Christopher Reeve he's the linchpin to that movie working. You believed he.
That's his real muscles too. He's not wearing a suit. Bulked up for him.
You actually had to really, and this is back before you had the six-pack abs. So the fact that he just basically looked like
a strong man.
And he's your dad. Yeah. Like Superman is, when you're a kid, Superman is the character that you believe in more than any other character. Because you're not old enough to understand that Batman's ostensibly cooler because he's darker and mysterious and his parents are dead and there's a whole messed up backstory.
Well, his parents are dead too.
Yeah, well, and like when you're a kid, it's lost on you that Marlon Brando's in this movie or that Christopher Reeves is in this movie. Like you're just watching your favorite hero in the world fly. And I saw this film and I went to Kmart with my mom and I said, I want those Superman pajamas that have the red feet at the bottom and they have a cape. And I climbed to the top of my stairs and I jumped. And I lived. But I tried, and it was one of those things like I would get out of the shower and like run around with a towel on, being like, I'm Superman. Like it's the most important thing in the world to a kid is this character. And when you grow up, you find other characters you love. But Superman, I don't think you really learn about how sort of one-dimensional Superman kind of is as a character until you get older and you kind of fall out of love with him, or at least a lot of people do. I know I did. That's when you start going for characters like Deadpool and Batman and Daredevil, and you're like, there's so much more interesting stuff there.
But I think it's like when you watch the old Christopher Reeve movies, he actually brought complexity to that guy. Yeah. I don't believe Clark Kent was ever portrayed as anything other than Superman with glasses.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the old George Reeves Superman TV series, that's essentially what he is. There was no difference in personality. And Christopher Reeve really helped create the idea that nobody would recognize Superman because he played him as a completely different guy. And just that one scene where he's with Lois in the balcony of her apartment and he flies off. And it's all, and then she's doing her kind of talking to herself thing. And then Clark is at the door. And you completely buy that she wouldn't know that until she goes in the other room and he takes off his glasses and his voice changes and he straightens up and suddenly he's Superman. And then he goes right back to it. And like that illusion, and it's all just acting.
Yeah, and Christopher Reeve is still, almost 40 years later, he's still sort of that model that people are.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime a Superman is cast, you were sort of putting it up against this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was just something natural about it. I mean, think about like the Batman movies in the '90s where they were like sculpting muscles on your character and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. And somebody like this, it's like it's believable. He's personable. He's human. You know.